President Buhari chairs National Security Council, renews commitment to safer Nigeria.
Mr. President is fully on board, committed to doing whatever is necessary to reduce the spate of violence and insecurity in the country.
Nigeria Center for Disease Control confirms 193 new cases of COVID-19, bringing the total number of infections to 5,162.
Nigeria did not request for Madagascar's herbal remedy, says PTF Chairman Boss Mustafa.
The impression out there is as if we abandoned homegrown solution and we were looking for Madagascar solution. We didn't ask for it, but it was taken in the spirit of African brotherly love.
Good morning, Nigeria. Today we continue our conversation on COVID-19, this time stepping up awareness.
Coronavirus is a deadly disease that someone should be extra careful by washing your hand with soap.
The governments are actually trying, and the people itself, everybody is conscious about it.
Right now, not everything you hear about COVID-19 is true. Now, the social media is replete with misinformation about the nature, spread, diagnostics, and treatment of the pandemic. Now, a typical example of such fake claim will be the insinuation that the one strain of coronavirus can be cured by simply eating and drinking cloves of boiled garlic in water kept overnight. Now, there are concerns that if these claims continue unabated, coronavirus may keep spreading and never go away.
Well, Claire, there's a lot such misinformation out there on the social media, and this has tended to exaggerate or exacerbate the pandemic. But there's no doubt that the traditional news media have helped many people to know precisely what to do. So, to stop the spread of the virus, we are advised to seek information about the disease from credible and trusted sources, such as the World Health Organization, Nigeria's own Federal Ministry of Health, and the Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC.
And of course, Kingsley, I dare add yet another third source, and that will be, of course, the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, and I can beat my chest to say that we are reputed for credible and authentic news and information. That's why we are taking it up upon ourselves today as part of our corporate social responsibility to step up your awareness, our awareness of COVID-19, and of course on this last edition of Good Morning Nigeria this week.
Absolutely, Claire. But beyond the need to access information about COVID-19 from trusted sources, which you earlier mentioned, we will also examine the gaps in messaging and how to bridge such gaps for increased awareness creation and also to capture those who may have inadvertently been excluded from the targets of such messages and messaging.
Indeed. So the thrust of our conversation today, that is stepping up awareness on COVID-19, was actually informed by concerns raised by some of our guests on Good Morning Nigeria last week, Friday, about those, of course, not targeted, as Kingsley earlier said. Specifically, they mentioned the elderly by different preventive messaging templates on COVID-19. So, on Good Morning Nigeria today, we ask, what or how much more do you know about the spread, contact, diagnosis and treatment of COVID-19? I am Claire Dilabo Abdul-Razak, and it's my pleasure to always have you join us from wherever you're watching, here in Abuja, outside Nigeria. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Now, in addition to the questions Claire has raised, how can messaging on COVID-19 be structured differently in order to widen the scope of those who should know? And is there a universal medical consensus on the specific treatment regime for COVID-19? Of course, the answer is no. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I join my colleague Claire to also welcome you to this edition of the program. As always, we are live on a network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. It's a wet morning here in Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. Claire, I don't know, it was cats and dogs a couple of hours ago.
Indeed,
yes.
Kingsley. But it's also a welcome, cool, atmosphere.
That's right. Yesterday, the temperatures were up to about 38 degrees here in the Capital Territory. Pretty humid, but today, I think the weather looks much better and much brighter.
Indeed,
windy, though, and stormy.
And I also want to appreciate our security men. On our way here this morning, we saw them, of course, but again, it was smooth ride for us today. So, the checkpoints are a bit much more, accessible this time around. So well done, everyone out there. This edition of Good Morning Nigeria, as always, comes with its full compliments. We will be taking our headline morning news in a short while. Of course, it will be followed by trending business stories. And Bayatebe will be here later on to do his usual newspaper review. And if time do permit us, we will click on sports. I see Blessing Abu already seated in a red hair tie, and of course, with the news. Hello, Blessing.
Hi, Claire. Okay, or what I've said, CK, Claire and Kingsley. Good morning. And here's the news. President Muhammadu Buhari has vowed to do whatever it takes within available resources and limits of the law to deal decisively and proactively with the various security challenges bedeviling the country. He said Nigerians deserve a much more peaceful environment and nothing will be left to chance towards achieving the objective for sustainable future. The president made a promise at an extraordinary meeting of the National Security Council.
Firmly in the crosshairs of all kinds of criminal elements trying to undermine national security. I stressed to Council that there's a need for collective action, not just by the security agencies, but by all ministries, departments, and agencies of government, as well as civil societies and other non-governmental organizations within Nigeria.
The Nigeria Center for Disease Control, NCDC, has announced 193 new cases of COVID-19 in Nigeria, increasing the number of confirmed cases to 5,162 till date. Of the 193 new cases, 58 are in Lagos, 46 in Kano, 35 in Jigawa, 12 in Yobe, 9 in the Federal Capital Territory, 7 in Ogun, 5 in Gombe, 4 in Imo, Edo, Kwara, and Borno. And Borno have 3 cases each, as Bauchi, Nasarawa, and Ondo all have 1 case each. Lagos State now has a total of 2,041 cases, followed by Kano with 707, while Federal Capital Territory has 370 cases confirmed. In total, there are 3,815 active cases, while 1,180 patients have been discharged, with 167 deaths recorded so far. As global apprehension continues over what the future holds for humanity post-COVID-19, particularly in respect to the economy, healthcare, job security, and general well-being, Nigerians have been assured of a robust post-COVID-19 plans by President Muhammadu Buhari. Nigeria did not place a request for Madagascar's herbal remedy for coronavirus. Chairman of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 and Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Bas Mustafa, at the daily briefing in Abuja gave the clarification following contrary insinuations amongst Nigerians.
Nigeria did not ask. The Madagascar government decided to airlift quantities meant for the African countries. That of West Africa was taken to Guinea-Bissau. So all the West African countries, all the members of ECOWAS, have their commodities offloaded in Guinea-Bissau. And that was the one I referred to, that we were making an arrangement to evacuate. But the impression out there is as if we abandoned homegrown solution and we were looking for Madagascar solution. We didn't ask for it, but it was taken in the spirit of African brotherly love.
Now, as the coronavirus keeps ravaging countries around the world, Government at all levels in Nigeria have risen to the occasion with various palliative measures. The Minister of Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management and Social Development, while reacting to the flag-off of food items distribution to parents of children under the National School Program, says the intervention is targeting over 3.1 million households across the country.
This is a globally accepted means of supporting children to continue to have access to nutrient-rich foods despite disruptions to traditional channels of school feeding.
For this response, we will also continue into the future as we work together as a whole society to try to achieve zero hunger for Nigeria.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo has observed that the coronavirus pandemic offers an opportunity for the Nigerian people and government to have a reset in critical sectors of the economy and social services. Vice President Osinbajo, at a virtual launch of the Nigeria Solidarity Support Fund, said the establishment of the fund will support the creation of a stronger, more resilient, more inclusive political economy and healthcare system. He noted that the deep plunge in oil earnings, the disruptions to business and commerce on account of lockdowns have meant that the nation must develop a comprehensive economic response. On the efforts being made by the federal government to ensure that Nigeria is properly positioned to deal with the fallout of the pandemic, the Vice President said there are several initiatives in place now to attempt an effective response to COVID-19 disaster, especially the drive to re-engineer and rethink the healthcare delivery systems, stressing that this by itself is a massive undertaking that will involve the states, local governments, and the private healthcare community. While commending the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority, the Global Citizen, and other partners for the initiative, the Vice President Osinbajo noted that the fund will support the social investment effort of government, especially the protection of the vulnerable and provision of assistance to many in that huge informal sector. The leadership of the National Assembly on Thursday met with the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, who briefed the legislative arm of government on the proposed amendments to the 2020 budget, which the minister said will be presented to the National Assembly by next week. In a statement by the Special Assistant to the President of the Senate on Press, Israel Tabiowo, the minister said it is necessary to reallocate resources in the 2020 budget to ensure the effective implementation of required COVID-19 emergency measures. She added that the federal government also adjusted the budget exchange rate to 360 naira to the dollar, and that the amount available for funding the 2020 budget is now estimated at 5.548 trillion naira, down from 8.419 trillion naira. A revised revenue estimate, which is 34% lower than that which was initially approved. The minister said the sum of 186.37 billion naira will be applied towards COVID-19 interventions across the Federation, while an additional 213.60 billion naira was provided in the service-wide votes for COVID-19 crisis intervention recurrent expenditures. President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, re-emphasized that the National Assembly and Executive Arm are on the same page and will work to fast-track the Budget 2020 amendments that will address the needs of the people of the country. And those are the news highlights for now. Good Morning Nigeria continues with Claire and Kingsley after this break. My name is Blessing Abu. Good morning.
virus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network. The number of the COVID-19 cases in Nigeria is increasing daily, with many more tests ongoing. The battle of testing, isolating, treating, and attending to the affected persons rests heavily on the shoulders of our health workers, constantly putting their lives on the line and at risk to contain this virus, save and protect the lives of millions of Nigerians. To these health workers, we at the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, on behalf of millions of Nigerians, say a big thank you for all that you have done and are doing. To the security agencies enforcing the lockdown and every other frontliner, we say thank you for putting your lives on the line to save ours. There is no amount of words that can quantify our gratitude. Thank you. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
You don't wait for life. You go to meet life. It's not about how many chances you get. It's what you do with what you've got. Cup after cup. Morning after morning. Start strong. Finish strong. It all starts with a Nescafe.
In this time of despair, our country, Nigeria, needs us now more than ever. We stand a chance to save our great country, Nigeria. A chance to rise up from this pandemic stronger and better. What will be the gain if we do not learn from other countries and observe the lockdown to stop the further spread of the virus? If we loosen our guards and allow this virus doom our very existence, then what have we gained? This is the call to every Nigerian to unite as one and stop the spread of this deadly virus. Stay at home and stay safe. Remember, the virus doesn't move unless we move. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Wake up, wake up. Nothing can hold us down. Get up. Born to wear the crown.
Breakfast today, every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
I'm Taiwo and I'm Kenya and we live here in Sao Paulo, Brazil. We've lived here for 15 years. Yeah, we're here to dedicate this video to my cousin, my dear cousin who lost his life due to coronavirus. His name was Baba Femi, Adebayo Femi. He was a good guy. And he was left behind his wife and two little kids. 2 children. He was in the ventilator for 12 days and he died. Anyways, we are here to alert everybody, both in Nigeria and in diaspora, to please stay safe. It's not enough to say stay safe. Maintain the social distancing, because it's easy to just get into the routine and say that other person also had coronavirus. If I get it, I'm young and strong and I'll be fine. But it's not about us being just young and strong. You know, here in Brazil, we've blamed the president, blamed everybody, but the responsibility still lies on us. Please, if you can, if you have to go outside, maintain the social distancing. Wash your hands all the time. Use your face mask. Use gloves if you can. And once you come inside, you return home, just try as much as possible to disinfect yourself at all times, because it's real. It's real. People don't have to die before we value life. Yeah, and we don't have to also lose our loved ones. If we can tell everybody, if we can inform everybody you know, to please stay safe, stay at home. We don't have to die. My cousin is gone now. I wish I could bring him back. I'm inconsolable. My heart is broken. But please, if you can, stay safe. Please remain at home if you can.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are skipping our business segment and going straight on now to a newspaper review.
All right, so Bayatebe, we have ample time today to do his usual, and I won't have to raise my red flag. Bayo, good to see you.
I was alarmed when I saw a touch of yellow on you, but now this is very reassuring. Good morning, Claire. Good morning, Kisley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Good to see you, Bayo.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
punch on.
I started with a punch yesterday.
Okay, let me go the sun. We need sun, a bit of sun this morning.
Okay.
Yes, here in Abuja. Okay, let's start off with the Daily Sun, and it has that lead story. COVID-19, governors reject infectious disease bill. It comes with the rider. Ask NAS to consult further. Resolve to set up 300-bed isolation each. And the second rider is that Dr. C returns negative, and of course he has reunited with his family. One of the good news we have this morning. Congratulations to him. Details of those stories you can find on pages 7 and 6. And you see a picture story there that's Leah Sharibu, of course, people with the placard wishing her happy birthday right there. But below the picture story, NAFDAC warns against use of chloroquine, hails Madagascar's herbal cure, confident of similar breakthrough soon. Other stories trending at the bottom there. Buhari vows, that should be President Muhammad Buhari, vows to stem insecurity, and Yoruba groups petition President seek clamp down on Amotekun on page 7. And there are other stories. Now, this one, FG flags off school feeding scheme in the FCT. And there's a rider there. Now, NCDC, ages 31 to 40, more susceptible to COVID-19. That's on page 6. But let me take you a little to the earpiece there, just beside the nameplate. And there's a story coming up there. And it says the earpiece just below the nameplate, just by the side of the nameplate, you'll find it there. Homemade cure for COVID-19 out soon. And that's coming from the Minister Ono. Details of that on page 6. Kingsley.
All right, let's take a look at the front page of the Punch newspaper. Borrowers grown as MFBs, that's to say microfinance banks, demand loan repayment. Borrowers grown as microfinance banks demand loan repayment. That's on page 19. Paying lecturers without biometrics fraudulent, says ASU. Budget. Federal government meets National Assembly, raises debt service by 225 billion naira. Oil records second monthly drop and unsold cargoes increase. Then the lead story says with a kicker, nationwide lockdown, 50% pregnant women, nursing mothers and others desert hospitals. With two riders to that story. Outpatient visits drop from 4 to 2 million. A Majority influx into southwestern spread, according to senators. These stories can be found in greater detail on page 2. And then you have photographs of the kickoff of the home feeding for school children, with the parents collecting the pupils' rations. That's on page 10. Zulum asks Muslims to pray against COVID-19 and Boko Haram. Gunmen kidnap Kaduna APC vice chairman and daughter. Sell presidential jets and cancel 27 billion naira National Assembly renovation fund. That's according to former Vice President Atiku. Details on page 14. Kajuru killings, death toll now 27, says Sokapu. That's page 12. Jumat gathering, 2 Bauchi imams fined 25,000 naira each. Buhari daughter's SIM, that's the SIM card, DSS order to pay trader 10 million naira. Bayo.
Well, thank you. Let's start with the update on COVID-19. Yesterday, there were new cases in 15 states of the Federation. That came to a total of 193. That brings our national total now to 5,162. 3 deaths were recorded, but the highest number were still in the same predominant areas. Lagos had 58, Kano 46, Jigawa 35. Yobe is also coming up now with 12. Federal Capital Territory is receding with 9, and so also is Ogun State with 7. The Presidential Task Force has congratulated frontline health workers for nursing 1,180 back to health, and I think that includes the Ezomo of Wapawano land, Aliego Dokwesi, who has now returned to his family. Congratulations to him. However, the chairman of the PTF re-echoed the fact that persons are still not taking full responsibility by complying with safety guidelines. And in this context, he highlighted that testing strategy is yielding results, and we can only complement that by the fact that we are even able to test more now. Then patients too who need need to approach the first phase of the lockdown, particularly as we are approaching the first phase of the lockdown, there will be gradual reopening of the economy, and he's emphasizing that we are in the early days of the rainy season, which is the earlier part of the planting season, and therefore authorities, security, state government and local government should make it easy for our farmers to return to the farm so that they will be able to sustain our food security and also national security. The fourth area of concern is also that our compatriots who were evacuated from United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom and USA should please adhere to quarantine conditions. Friends and relations continue to visit them, which is obviously a violation of the conditions for quarantine. Around the world, we are lucky in Nigeria. Yesterday we had 193 cases, where Russia had 10,028 new cases. And United States cases now is about 1.3 with 82,246 deaths. Lesotho has just recorded its first case. Lucky Lesotho. However, Mauritius, another country in Africa, has recorded 17 days without any new case of COVID-19. So gradually, they are edging. It reminds me of the day when we were trying to beat polio. You remember? We recorded the required number of days, just a few days to it. Unfortunately, we spotted one, and then we had to go back the whole full circle again. But Lesotho is now, Mauritius is now leading the way, and it means that COVID-19 can be beaten. All we're required to do is to adhere strictly to all the conditions.
I just hope so.
Yes.
I just hope so. But that's where the issue is. The adhering strictly, social distancing. It appears to be a difficult thing for most Nigerians to do.
Yes.
Because you see even the motorcycle riders still carrying 4 passengers, even without any face mask. You see the taxi drivers taking their normal number of passengers and all that. So it's a big issue, Bayo.
Yes, it's a big issue. In fact, the managing director of BRT in Lagos said that they usually carry 70 passengers. But with the COVID-19, they had to reduce that considerably. And he says that is a sacrifice they had to pay because there's no amount of money you can put onto the value of life. But the commercial drivers live on this. For instance, in Abuja here, they say they were carrying 6 passengers, 100 naira each. Now, they are forced to carry 1 in front and 2 at the back. And they have increased their rate to 150. So they now make 450 instead of the 600 they are making. And they are already worrying. That is why many of them are trying to beat that. Talking about the motorcyclists, the riders, many of them don't bother to wear even the face mask. But because people are pressed and they want to move, I don't know why they subject themselves to such danger. But the responsibility is for you and I to abide by those guidelines so that we can keep COVID-19 at bay.
Well, that's fine. But, there's also the confusion as to when to put on the face mask.
Exactly.
Yes, there's also some confusion.
Very big confusion.
If I'm alone in my car and I'm driving, do I need to put on the face mask?
Ideally, no. It's supposed to be worn only in the public places.
Do we need to wear face masks here right now?
Oh, well, I mean, it would distort our audio. That's the reason that we have enough distance between us.
Yes.
That's why we're not putting on a face mask. If you are in your home, as experts have indicated, do you need a face mask? Let me pose it as a question. You don't. Well, as Bayo has indicated, it's when you are in a public place and then you are in a crowd of persons, of course, who are not your family members with whom you live, say in public transport, XYZ, then you need to have the face mask on. But what you find is persons are driving, maybe with AC on, AC not on, everybody see this face mask. I hope we don't begin to have cases of adverse consequences arising from all of that. Because, look, even when medical personnel use the face mask, they don't have it on, 24/7. It's when they get into the theater, and there's very minimal talking that they do. In the course of it, although they interact, but it's not. If you are exercising, for instance, you need a face mask. If you're exercising, you need to be able to breathe. You need to inhale a great more of oxygen, so that your oxygenated blood can circulate in your system. So, but the important thing is, look, have your own face mask and be sure that if it's made from fabric or what is referred to as cloth, then from time to time you sanitize it by washing in warm water and soap, and then after it dries up, you iron it. And then I mean, we all have the face mask which we put on, at the end of the program. I normally go about with two, that's it.
I took a cue from
Yes, I have one.
Mine. I have
yes,
mine.
Yeah, we have it. So it's not as if
once I get out of the studio.
That's right. So that the viewer will not then say that all these ones they are preaching on NTA, they don't have it. We have it. So it's very easy.
Yes.
So, but it's when you utilize it and so on and so forth. That's a critical point, I believe, Claire.
Kingsley, let's quickly take a look at the editorial, which is still on
just
COVID-19.
before you take the editorial, I just please, if you don't mind, there is a story on pages 4 and 5. The story is not promoted of the Punch. It's not promoted on the front page, but the story has been trending for a couple of days now. It says BRT, that is the bus rapid transport, crushes Lagos businesswoman to death. Driver flees. Now, it says that a driver, the name is mentioned there, has gone into hiding after crushing a businesswoman, Mrs. Grace Okeleke, to death at the Agric box stop in the Ikorodu area of Lagos. The incident happened on Monday. Now, the victim is the wife of the head of public relations of Globacom, Andrew Okeleke, and she was attempting to cross the road after being dropped off by her driver around 7:20 p.m. when the driver of the BRT knocked her down. The woman died on the spot, and then the driver was said to have zoomed off and abandoned the victim at the scene of the accident.
Well, I think this is a challenge to the police, and it's easier. This is an easy thing to detect. BRT is identifiable. The number of the vehicle is known. It can be traced to the entity of the vehicle.
Because BRT, they have their times and the route. Okay, quickly, Bayo, we have just two minutes. I'm sorry to raise my red flag again. But let's quickly look at this, because this is very critical, the editorial, and it's coming from the pilot. I'll just quickly read out the paragraphs, which is the crux of the matter.
Yes.
And it says, recently, Northern Elders Forum, NEF, under the leadership of, released a disturbing statement in Kaduna. The body raised grave concerns about alarming death rate in Kano and other states in the region by yet to be scientifically proven cause. Now, one of the remarks of the elders' statement was on the unfortunate politicization of official COVID-19 fatality reports for funding purposes. Now, it continues. The forum regrets the appearance of attempts by many state governments to play politics with numbers for what appears to be expectations that more funds from the federal government and foreign donors will be allocated to them. And the demand is that NDDC should respond immediately to the allegations of fake numbers. Bayo, please, I beg you briefly.
Okay, very briefly. Well, the whole idea is about the fact that the more cases you declare in your state, the possibility that you will get more grants. That is the fallacy that is thrown out there. And therefore, two states have already cried out, Kogi State and Cross River State. So what the editorial is saying that the Nigerian Center for Disease Control should come out clean and clarify this element of cloud that has come about, the numbers that are being declared in states as regards the presence of COVID-19, so that they are not just numbers put forward for the purpose of raising funds.
So that doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense that states would want to use such,
It doesn't, but from Kogi State has read alarm that they will not declare numbers when there are none because they owe their citizens the psychological responsibility not to declare what is not available. Cross River State has also said that they've been told that the more numbers you declare, the more funds they will get. But on the other hand, we've not had any categorical clarification on this. And that is what the editorial is happening on.
I don't think that the incentive for declaring numbers is in order to be able to access some higher funding or grant. I mean, just for public health purposes, to know precisely. We were talking about polio earlier, you recall.
Yes.
It's not as if you declare the presence of polio in your environment and then you get more grant. It's for public health management purposes. And I think that's the most significant. I don't think money is going to anywhere. The case of Lagos is understandable, because Lagos was where the index case came, and the population of Lagos is also there. Yes, we do know that there was some attempt at some persons indicated that, send us money, because we're also as populous as Lagos.
Yes.
On account of that. I don't think that is the key driver of the response of the authorities to the pandemic in the country.
Well, and NCDC has a responsibility to also react. But Bayo, that's how we will. You've got your full time. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. You got to thank me. You got to thank me. See you next week.
Expected of you.
See you next week. Have a good week. All right. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll be right back to begin our conversation. Don't go away.
You don't wait for life. You go to meet life. It's not about how many chances you get. It's what you do with what you've got. Cup after cup. Morning after morning. Start strong. Finish strong. It all starts with a Nescafe.
There is a lot of fake news and report circulating, especially on social media, on the coronavirus. Do not believe or partake in the spread of these fake reports. If it is not on the official website or news from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, disregard such report. Only together can we beat this virus. Only together can we overcome this pandemic. Follow the instructions and guidelines provided to combat this virus. Most importantly, stay at home. Self-isolate, regardless of your status. The virus doesn't move unless we move. Let us work together to better Nigeria. Together, we can do this.
This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide, don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
As a strong immune system increases the chances of victims surviving COVID-19, a corruption-free society creates opportunities for citizens to thrive and prosper. Build your immunity. Stop corruption now. Report all acts of corruption to ICPC on this toll-free number 0800 2255 4272. This message is brought to you by ICPC and NTA.
We have observed the lockdown. We have practiced the measures in order to curb the spread of the virus, but we can do better. The coronavirus spread is increasing daily, and only together can we cut down the numbers and defeat the spread of the virus. Remember, COVID-19 is not a death sentence, and a recovered patient cannot spread the disease. Do not stigmatize. Do not hesitate to report any case, or if you have come in contact with anybody that has been infected with COVID-19. If you have cough and fever, please stay at home and call your state hotline. Find state numbers at www.covid19.ncdc.gov.ng. Remember, it is for your own good and for the good of every Nigerian. Let us do better and defeat the virus. Together, we can do this. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
Right, welcome back. This is Good Morning Nigeria, and it's live on the network service of the NTA here in Abuja. Wherever you're watching, as I said earlier on, or as Kingsley and I said at the beginning, we're taking it upon ourselves. It's part of our corporate social responsibility to step up our awareness on COVID-19. And that's the thrust of our conversation this morning. But just before we bring in our guests, let's take a listen into this backgrounder by Abdulsalami Jibril.
It's been almost 3 months since Nigeria recorded its index case of the coronavirus disease. The person was an Italian citizen who works in Nigeria and returned from Milan, Italy to Lagos. Since then, the country has recorded an increase in COVID-19 cases, released daily by the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, with the breakdown of active cases, those discharged, as well as deaths. The federal government has since taken several measures towards curbing the spread of COVID-19, which includes creating awareness and sensitizing citizens on the dangers and the need to keep safe, closure of all points of entry into the country, a total lockdown of Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun states, with other state governments following suit. The federal government have since relaxed the lockdown partially. Now, how conscious are Nigerians on the dangers of COVID-19? Are Nigerians aware of the precautionary measures that need to be adopted to curtail the spread of the virus?
Coronavirus is a deadly disease that someone should be extra careful by washing your hand with soap and water.
I protect myself with my hand sanitizer and my face mask.
The governments are actually trying, and the people itself, everybody is conscious about it.
From the response of some Nigerians there, it is apparent that many are informed and have begun taking necessary protection against the virus with the compulsory wearing of face masks. However, with the rising number of confirmed cases across the country, some Nigerians have stressed that more awareness and sensitization needs to be done towards ensuring that the spread of the virus is stopped. This will form the basis of discussion on the program shortly.
All right, stepping up our conversation on COVID-19 awareness, our mandate here on NTA, and of course, every other media's responsibility. Let me quickly introduce our guests here in the studio. We have joined us, David Akagi is a familiar face, Special Assistant to the Director General, National Orientation Agency, NOA. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr.
Thank you
Akagi.
very much, Claire. Pleasure to be here.
Okay, we also have here with us, he was here last week Friday, Senator Eze Ajoku, President, Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria, COSROPIN. Good to see you again, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay.
All right, and another regular guest on Good Morning Nigeria, this time joining us from our Kano Network Center is Professor Umaru Pate, who is a professor of mass communication and Dean School of Postgraduate Studies at Barrier University. Professor Pate, I'm delighted to have you again on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Kingsley, and the rest of the members of the team, as well as Nigerians. Good morning.
All right, thank you. Let's begin with David Akagi. And by the way, we have Ako today. I mean, David Akagi and Senator Ajoku probably will tell us what the similarities are. And somehow
I'm wearing the same thing.
Their outfits look like what Nigerians will refer to as Anko. You know, when, before the arrival of coronavirus, when everybody, our fabrics and clothes are now in the bottom of our various portmanteau. But, you know, gentlemen will appreciate, you know, the colors that you have this morning. But let's begin with David Akagi, who is of the National Orientation Agency. Now, I mean, the trigger to this conversation, we've had you on Good Morning Nigeria several times, is what appears to be still the gap in messaging, as well as speculation of the message right down to the grassroots, because there's the persisting denial of the prevalence of the pandemic, and even the behaviors that you find. I mean, people smuggling, people moving from one location to the other in violation of the restriction on interstate movement, and so on and so forth. I mean, you go to a place like Kano, where Professor Mario Pate is, and sometimes it's like as if the social distance isn't in their dictionary. So, what exactly was the communication strategy for dealing with this pandemic, and how has it unfolded?
Okay. Very interesting question, Kings. You do know that there's a presidential task force on COVID-19. That presidential task force has several committees looking at various components of the national response to this challenge of COVID-19. The committee that's responsible for citizens' engagement at various levels, including community engagement, is the Risk and Community Engagement Committee. I'm a member of that committee. We have been meeting. A lot of strategies are being planned. Most city centers are already saturated with information on the prevention protocols and the desired behavior protocols, you know, on COVID-19 to keep safe. I agree with you completely when you say enough has not been done in the rural areas. At the level of, and I will respond to this from two directions. At the level of the Risk Communication Committee, we have done a lot of trainings. The approach is that COVID-19 is a medical challenge, and that even its risk communication requires medical expertise and knowledge. And that is correct to some extent. Given the fact that this is a highly contagious disease, you don't just want every Tom, Dick, and Harry going out there to expose themselves and increase our risk of spread in the name of doing grassroots sensitization. There has to be some basic level of medical knowledge to go about this sensitization properly. So a lot of training is being conducted. At the lead for the sensitization at the grassroots level is the health promotion officers. And these health promotion officers are found in literally every village. You know, they work with their community health workers, you know, they work with the community, they understand it. And they've been doing health risk communication in the area of Lassa fever, of polio, and the rest of them. So this is the strategic approach. Now, National Orientation Agency is the government agency established for the purpose of creating awareness. And so the citizens of this country and members of the public look up to us to get the required information. This expectation is not lost on us, even though we are not in the lead in terms of the national strategy for risk communication. And to that extent, we're doing quite a lot in the rural areas. Our officers, our community orientation and mobilization officers in various communities have been going out, you know, to public places, to markets. They've been doing motorized campaigns on various streets, including Abuja. As I speak with you now, we're running a campaign in Abuja that's taking our motorized orientation vans to every municipal area I think that's the equivalent of local government in Abuja.
That would be an area council.
Yes, the area council. Thank you very much. So, and this has been ongoing. We are posting it in the social media and all of that. And then we have also been going on media platforms across the 36 states and Abuja. Like you rightly said at the beginning of this program, I've appeared here a couple of times, appeared on a number of other programs, Ditto for radio, you know, and all of that. So to that extent, there's a lot that we're doing. I can tell you for sure that the Risk Communication Committee platform of the Presidential Task Force is working closely with civil society and with donor agencies who are, as I speak with you, doing a national mapping of volunteer groups and people who have experience in communicating this risk at grassroots level. This is aimed at deepening, you know, the conversation around COVID-19, the fact that it's real, its prevention protocols, you know, and then getting citizens to also respond the way that government and the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 expects. So a lot is happening on the field. Yes, we have not saturated that level, that's the grassroots level, but a lot is being done to ensure that we do.
All right, Mr. Koji, thank you. Thank you for your extensive explanation. Let me bring in the distinguished Senator Eze Ajoku, who was also here last week, and of course, one of those who raised the fundamental issues that, of course, prompted our conversation today. Mr. Koji has raised, you know, some very salient, you know, points. The approach, of course, he says, is based on medical you know, challenge. That's the messaging approach is based on the understanding of it as a medical challenge. He's also talked about those who, you know, carry out the messaging should have basic knowledge, you know, of whatever it is, and of course availability of health officers. But there are some basic information that people really, you know, do not understand. For instance, if you watch the way I'm putting on my face mask, a lot of people do wear their face mask this way, which of course we know is wrong. And that's basically why I'm putting on this way. These are basic issues that people should know. Considering this, you know, gap, do you think the approaching COVID-19 messaging from a medical health challenge is appropriate? Is it sufficient?
In my own opinion, I do not think so. Because we do not have enough medical people across the network of Nigeria to be able to communicate this. Therefore, we must look for other avenues to communicate it. There is the issue of communication in rural areas. There is the issue of communication in urban areas. He did say, and I agree partially, that there's been a lot of communication in urban areas. But the issue is, why is someone in Morocco, or no, there's no Morocco.
There is Morocco in Lagos.
Well, no, it's now a big city. It's no longer called Morocco. Where is somebody in Maraba or in any other part of identity not obeying this? Why are the Okada riders not obeying these instructions? So you have to deal with the metropolitan city, and you have also to deal with the rural areas. I think the problem with the communication of COVID, and that's why a lot of people believe there is nothing like it, is that they hear numbers. They don't know of anybody who they can relate to, and therefore make them say, this person, I know he has died, or that person has died. Yes, we know the issue of stigmatization, but people are not relating to the issue in terms of infected today, except the media person who was infected. I personally don't know anybody who is infected. And therefore, when you are telling somebody, he will tell you, leave this thing, leave this matter. So those are some of the problems we're encountering in communication. Now, if you go to the rural areas have their own ways of passing information. Last week we talked about hearsay. The older people hear about it from people around them. What COVID-19 has exposed is that our community-based structures have not been harmonized to be used for effective communication in our rural areas. I appreciate the fact that NOA is in every local government, because this week I had to send a note to them. Something happened in my village and an NOA staff was there. I said, wow. And again, you remember we signed a memorandum of understanding with them to ensure and work with them under our organization and the CSOs generally to be able to communicate. I think there is need now for effective utilization of the community-based structures to communicate in the rural areas. Because if you don't do that and they associate with situations, it will be difficult for people to believe the numbers that we hear every day. Again, you will find also that there are people who ought to know and they are not behaving like they know. In communicating things like this, the enforcement of these processes are necessary. And I do not think at this stage that our security forces are helping. Because where will you see 50 people, 80 people in a trailer moving, and they are not stopping those trailers moving with people, in spite of the communications that have gone out there?
Okay, so ab initio, let me just quickly get out your response to my question. So ab initio, you do not think that approaching the messaging from a medical perspective is sufficient?
No.
All right, Senator Akagi, thank you very much. Oh, we're talking to you.
That's prophetic.
That's right. You will have to pardon that. I mean, Ajoko. I say Akagi, Ajoko. All right, gentlemen, thanks a lot for the correction. Let's go over to Professor Umaru Pate in our Kano Network Center. Professor Umaru Pate, there is no question about it that there is a lot of information out there with regard to COVID-19. But are we communicating effectively to trigger the required behavior change in respect of what COVID-19 pandemic demands?
Thank you very much, Kingsley. We are communicating, but we are not communicating effectively or strategically to the extent of achieving the desired objective for all Nigerians to become sufficiently informed on the virus or on the pandemic, and not just being informed, but to raise their risk perception levels. If an individual's risk perception level is high, there is a very big possibility or a very high tendency for him to adopt measures that can protect him and protect those whom he lives with. However, what we are experiencing, there are a lot of mixed messaging. Mixed messaging in the sense that you have messages of different meanings coming to the individual. To some extent, he may be saturated, but saturated with information of different kinds that it becomes so difficult for him to believe which one and leave which one. Now, apart from that, there are also, I want to look at it from two perspectives. One, the level of the individual who is supposed to be the recipient of the message, and at the level of the communicator himself. Let's assume we are talking about the media here. To what extent is the media sufficiently equipped, protected, and safe to be able to communicate convincingly and sufficiently for Nigerians? Number two, at the level of the individuals, what kind of messages is he receiving? Now, one, he is receiving messages from media, our conventional media like NTA, FRC, and others. Number two, he's receiving messages from the social media platforms, and 1,001 messages of different kinds come to him. On the social media platforms, he is misinformed, he is disinformed. And what do you mean by misinformation and disinformation? Misinformation is the kind of information that you receive without any malicious intention, but may not necessarily be correct. Disinformation is the information that is conspiratorially prepared with malicious intention necessarily to mislead you. And we have a lot of it. Studies have been undertaken by some organizations, not necessarily in Nigeria, but out of Nigeria, and they have found out that 40%, for example, a study recently conducted by, I think, an institute in Germany, found out that out of 112 million social media posts, 40% of it came from unreliable sources. Another study also found out that out of 178 million tweets, 42% of it were from unreliable sources. And again, another study recently also found that 1 out of every 3 recipients of social media messages reported seeing messages that are not necessarily correct. Now, if you come to the Nigerian context, we may not even have people who are so highly enlightened to be able to even detect when they are being misinformed or disinformed. Then secondly, so you can see how some of our social media messages are also misinforming our people. Then secondly, you have issues of denial from influencers, from political leaders, and sometimes from authorities on these messages. Here you are, seeing people dying in numbers, yet nobody can tell you what is the major cause of the deaths. Rather, we give them some strange names, and we also come out openly to say these people are not dying or have not died because of the pandemic, but rather of some other diseases. Now, it is very easy. How many times have we conducted very serious studies to determine the major reason why there is an upsurge within a specific period of time in the deaths of people in a particular environment? Naturally, it will attract attention. Even if you have a poultry, and then you wake up one morning and see, maybe you have a poultry of about, let's say, 100 chickens, and then you wake up in the morning and see about 30 chickens dying, and then the next morning again you see another 20 dying, it will attract attention, not to talk of human beings. So people become confused. Now, again, apart from that issue of denial, the issue of the psychological proximity between the people, the messages, and the communicators. Here, you have, like the senator said, issues being raised without people having a close understanding of the issues, because they were told that, look, A, B person did not die because of coronavirus, because of COVID-19. He died of probably another disease. And so the individual finds it difficult to connect his psychology to the pandemic. Again, people are locked up in their houses. And because they are locked up, there is kind of psychological tension in them. For some people, they cannot become economically active, and the level of poverty in them increases, thereby also raising their their economic risks. That again also has its own tendency of making them not to believe the messages and rather tend to think of some other issues that are brought to them consequence of the mixed messaging we have been talking about. Now, at the level of the communicator, the journalist is the individual, at least we know in the Nigerian context, who is in charge of disseminating information. So to what extent is the journalist himself protected? How economically, psychologically, legally, and even physically protected is he in the business of disseminating information? Don't forget, media people are in the front line of covering information to disseminate to the public. But how covered are they to be able to go into our villages, scrutinize what is happening, gather information, come and spread to the public? So they also remain in the cities, depend on sources that are given to them, that give them official information and then disseminate without doing what you could describe as real investigative journalism. Not that they cannot do it, but they are also vulnerable. So by the time you look at all of these things, then you realize that we have a problem. Again, if you go to our local government areas or some parts of Nigeria, particularly in the north, there are areas in this country, and I will see it again, that are not covered by any Nigerian media signal. They do not receive any radio station, they do not receive signals from any television station, they do not have access to newspapers. Now, how do they get informed? Unfortunately, the structures at the local government level have completely died. Nowhere except in the local government is only operating on paper. They do not have the capacity, the wherewithal to be able to undertake the campaign they are expected to do. Our local government information structures are completely inefficient or completely not operating at all. And where they are operating, you can be sure that they only operate as protocol officers with the chairman. Because the normal things that they used to do in the past, they can no longer do them. So who informs the person at the local government level? He has to depend on alternative sources of information, the social media, like we have said, some of the religious leaders who themselves may not be sufficiently informed, and other unorthodox means of getting informed. So at the end of the day, he is left on his own to inform himself. The attention is on Abuja, is on Lagos, is on the state capitals. What happens at the local government levels, what happens at the villages, we do not know. And many of the people who have left Lagos, who are living the capitals, or who are living the cities, return to these villages. And we do not have statistics. We do not know what happens. The primary healthcare system does not even have the capacity to capture data, talk less of offering services that will take care of our people. So by the time you look at all of this, you know that the information sector is highly deficient to be able to provide the kind of support that we are thinking for a population of about 200 million people, not just the population of Abuja. Abuja could be operating efficiently, but the villages have their own problems. And we know that providing information is the best way to help the people to protect themselves, is the best means of prevention. This disease, we all know our health system is so weak to the extent that it becomes difficult to be able to cater in the event of any major outbreak in this country. So our attention should be focusing on prevention. And prevention is about information availability to create high risk perception level in the minds of the people for them to take care of themselves.
So, Patty, thank you very much, and I'd just like to appreciate all of you and to say that maybe we should try and, sum up our contribution so that we can have time to, get to every person here for this conversation. Let me quickly introduce the Ebonyi State Commissioner for Information, who is joining us via Skype from Abakaliki, the capital of Ebonyi. That's Uchenna Oje. Commissioner, thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. Let me quickly take you on the universality of the messaging. Do you think there is a universal, a unified message across governments on COVID-19?
Yeah, I can say that the PTF, that is the Presidential Task Force, has been doing a lot in ensuring that they connect with all the states to ensure that there is a concerted or collaborative efforts in containing the scourge of coronavirus in Nigeria. Of course, Nigeria as a federation needs the interdependence of states, and of course, the coordinating federal government to ensure that all the programs and the activities are taken down through the rural communities, centrally. And being a federated state, each state has the duty of ensuring robust programs, that are in line with their peculiarities, as a state. So I can say that so far so good. It has been so wonderful. Nigerian governments are doing very well in ensuring that they carry the message of this coronavirus to the rural communities, to all the nooks and crannies of the entire country. Here in Ebonyi State, we aren't taking last in that regard. We have really constituted a committee. At a world level, we have what is called the health wards. We have political wards that are 171 in number, but we went beyond that to look at the health wards, which is 296 in number. And we did constitute a task force, which has the duty, twin duty of sensitization and also enforcement of the regulations and the precautionary measures in the rural communities. Then we have what is called a development center. The development system is a system of government that comes after local government system. And so it is 64 in number in Ebonyi State. And so there is a structure also, a task force also that goes around the entire development centers at the local government level, which has 13 number local government areas. We also have this same task force working to ensure that everybody gets to know, the precautions. And you will also need to know that even at the state level, the governor is directly heading the various subcommittees, constituted, that take care of, specialized areas, the market, church issues, using the parks, and other, notable, service centers that must get to, be part of the whole processes. And so this is what government in Ebonyi State has done. And in doing all of this thing, we appreciate the fact that we are a democratic institution. And that's why the governor is among the first governors to sign into law coronavirus and other dangerous diseases and related matters, Law 005 of Ebonyi State. And again, of course, that did validate all the regulations that the governor did issue before that time. They call in January, when the governor got wind of this, he did not only take some measures, he also had to constitute a committee to look at the possibilities of having treatment centers, where are the borders, and all of that. But eventually in March, when the escalation came to Nigeria, the governor had to quickly move in by, himself, leading the operational processes. From time to time, he does, call a meeting, make a broadcast, make regulations, and where necessary, goes to update or goes to make further and better regulations to see that people are really, participating in all that is required to ensure the enforcement of the coronavirus regulations in Ebonyi State. So far, so good. I can say that we are really doing our best as a state.
All right. Aljiu, Chena, thank you very much. I just want to still ask you this question. Since you are with us, Vice Cap, on the signals are pretty clear this time. You've talked about the structures that you have for disseminating information. And earlier, David Akagi, who is of the National Orientation Agency, gave a broad outline of the strategic framework that is being utilized for this purpose. So, in terms of the effectiveness of seeing this elaborate structure at work, what do you think is happening? I'm asking this question against what we see. Yes, in the urban areas, as has been indicated, you find there's some appreciable level of compliance with the required protocols. But there is still some level of denial in the suburbs, in the satellite towns, and in the rural areas. And then the kind of behavior that you see amongst our security agencies, some of them who turn a blind eye as people are being smuggled across interstate boundaries, even when there is a restriction on that, and there are all kinds of allegations as to what goes on. And then you also find persons who are moving the corpses from one location to the other, unmindful of what the consequences are. So exactly what is happening? What do you think is amiss at this moment as a gap and therefore needs to be closed?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, those are the human tendencies that we will need to tackle head-on. I understand also that even returnees wouldn't even know regulations within the state, and they would just blindly come into states. And but what we have done as a state is to have a collaborative meeting with security agencies, the army, the police, civil defense, and all of that. And in each of our briefings, we get them to be part of our briefing. From time to time, they come to the studio to also tell the entire state what they are doing, and if there are questions, the people will ask. And let me tell you one thing, a good news, that in Ebonyi State, we have what is called situation room. That situation room is a information dissemination process, whereby our media house, our local media house, on daily basis, day and night, 24 hours, gets to know what is happening in all the communities through a structure that we already have on ground. We have the list, phone numbers of all the leaders within the police units, within the wards, within the local government areas. From time to time, we ask them what is happening. and they will give us feedback if there are issues with security agencies, with task force members, issues of lack of compliance with regulations by persons. Then that will be addressed. Now, all the necessary feedback mechanism processes will be taken care of. I want to also let you know that we aren't isolated from the communities. Of course, I know the government of Ebonyi State has been so wonderfully doing well, and so the people appreciate and support and cooperate with whatever Governor Mahi is doing. And that is why, as we work, we are liaising with the community leaders, the town union traditional rulers, and all the organizations, voluntary organizations, youth leaderships in all the communities. And they are really in tune with all the do's and the don'ts. And where there are issues, we resolve them and make sure that we go ahead to do the proper thing. Let me say that Ebonyi State is a state that has what is called situation room. That is, on daily basis, anybody can call the radio house, the television house to say, look at what I'm seeing, look at what is happening. That is the way that we have been following, and that is why we've been able to, kind of block all leakages and ensure that we tackle all compromises along the borders. Yeah, before now, the borders had been identified in the persons who were told to man those borders. And what the governor said is that, yes, it is true that we are telling Ebonians outside the state to stay where they are, passionately appealing to them, stay where you are, do not come back. But supposing somebody comes back, like you have a war situation outside and somebody is returning to his home, would you say he mustn't come in? The governor said no, that compassionately as a father, that he needs to really ensure that the person, is intercepted. Of course, taken to the quarantine center. We have a lot of processes. We have what is called holding centers. We have 39 holding centers, across the state, 3 per local government area. And what we do is to say, if you are coming from any part, outside the state, we make sure you go straight to, you are intercepted from anywhere, any border you are coming from. You are sent straight to your local government and you are going to be quarantined. We have a lot of processes. Once you are quarantined, we now look at the symptoms and see where screening is necessary and also ensure that you are screened. And if the symptoms are anything that can be given attention, then you will be tested. And the idea is that if you are going to be quarantined, be quarantined for 14 days.
All right, Uchen, thank you very much there for your response. Claire, of course, let's come back to our studios with our two guests here, Senator Ajoku and David Akagi. David Akagi, I mean, against the background of what you said and against also the experiential views of the other guests, I still would like you, maybe you may wish to respond to what they said, but there's an aspect of this. Is it necessarily the case that perhaps the national strategy is a bit too centralized, and therefore the trickle-down effect has been slow in getting down to the grassroots? Because it's a pandemic that affects the entire population. So we're back, as what communication scholars would say, we are back to what we refer to as the news flow patterns. From the center to the periphery, the center gets saturated, the periphery, has very little or no information, and yet behavior in the periphery could impact and affect every part of the country. So is the system too centralized? And Pate mentioned the fact that we are suffering today the consequence of the collapse of the local government system in the country.
Dr. Pate's contribution was quite incisive, and there are many aspects of his contribution that I agree completely with. I must tell you this, Kingsley. I'm very glad that Nigerians are interrogating the national response strategy, because what it tells is that Nigerians are not docile, that they're watching and they're feeling the impact of whatever it is that government is doing in response to this challenge of COVID-19. Now, in the first address that Mr. President gave when he was declaring the lockdown in Lagos, Ogun, and Abuja, there's a very important point that he made. He said that we, Nigerians, are the greatest weapons that we have to fight this pandemic. you know. Now, the interpretation of that is that citizens have a role to play. Now, he also said that there's no cure for the coronavirus, even as we speak. Several nations are doing trials. You know, people are trying all kinds of experiments in different parts of the world. But the reality before us today is that there's no cure. Now, that creates a bit of confusion when you hear that people tested positive. They were put in isolation. They were treated. And they now tested negative and have left and have come back into society. It creates some level of confusion in the minds of the public. But that's not the issue that I want to dwell on at this time. I'm happy that Dr. Pate interrogated our communication structures at the grassroots level to the extent that he has done. So the question that we must ask ourselves nationally and as people in charge of the response to this challenge is, what is the level of our investment in communication at the grassroots for a disease that the world is saying has no cure? How much of our available resources have we put in our risk communication response, especially at the grassroots? I think that needs to be interrogated because it's extremely important. We can quantify our investment in treatment, in the establishment of isolation centers, you know, and in contact tracing, in purchase of test kits. All of these are extremely important here, but there's no cure for this disease. So like Dr. Pate said,
Professor Pate.
Professor Pate said, it's extremely important that we do deep, consistent information dissemination, especially at the grassroots level. Now, why is Professor Pate concerned about this? You will agree with me, Kings, that 80% of our national population reside in the rural areas. You know? So, if our strategy is not responsive to what's going on with 80% of our national population, then it means we need to take another look at it critically, especially now that Nigerians are responding, and ask ourselves, what is our investment level in risk communication at the grassroots level?
Okay, thank you. I know we're looking at the structure, and whether, you know, the availability of it at the grassroots. But let me also look at the content of the messaging. Yes, because earlier on you talked about the approach, which is from a medical health challenge perspective. And we know that a lot of people, most of the states, many states have complained about non-compliance with the preventive measures. Simple wearing of the face mask, I told you. Even this particular one, a lot of people don't even know how to use them. Now, a lot of people have also complained about the use of the words, certain medical terms, isolation, quarantine. Those who have come down are positive with it, don't even want to go to the isolation centers. Could this be as a result of the approach? Can we de-emphasize the use of such terms so that we don't scare people away, so that people will begin to, you know, look at it as an ordinary, you know, like malaria, for instance. So people are not afraid to come out for testing. Is there a way? I don't know. Maybe Senator.
Let me just say something quickly.
Yes.
Because that question that you raised also dovetails into an aspect of the question that Kingsley asked, which I think I did not address while I was talking. He was asking whether the national response strategy is too centralized. You know, the structure of the national response strategy is that state governments are supposed to take responsibility for their area of jurisdiction. And you would find, if you look at the landscape, you'll find that there are states that have done excellently well in this regard. Look at Lagos State, for instance. Lagos State government response provide a lot of lesson learning opportunities for other states that came later to be included in the contact and the spread, you know. But we find that not many state governments actually drew the lessons that they were supposed to learn from what Lagos State government did, being the index case state. And up till now, Lagos State is doing excellently well. There are state governments that are not strengthening any of the structures that Professor Pate talked about. Their contribution in terms of establishing response, you understand, in terms of risk communication at their level is next to nothing. I know that the president has engaged with state governors. I know this from the inside, and has appealed to them to rise up to the occasion and do their part. And the expectation is that they would also galvanize local government chairmen within their states to also take responsibility, leadership responsibility at that level, and set up structures that are similar, and that all of these structures would work in collaboration with the national structure.
Yes, but how are these structures conveying the messages that people need to know? Simple, either use your gloves. Now, we don't even know whether to wear, where and how to wear the face mask. We hear conflicting, information about who is eligible to use the face mask, where do you wear the face mask, how do you wear the face mask. These are messaging that, are out there in the domain, and they're quite conflicting. So how are we conveying these messages? If you watch the TV, okay, I'm beginning to see young, children being used to, target that age group and all that. So how are we conveying these messages? Wear your face mask, don't wear your face mask, this is how you should wear it, this is what you should do?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
It's an open question. But
yes.
Senator Ajoko, you may wish to respond to this, but in doing so, I would like to reference part of what you said last week when you were our guest on Good Morning Nigeria. You were talking about communicating effectively to the elderly category. Yeah. Maybe we may wish to elaborate on that and say, okay, in getting the communication strategy into work, have we seen effective segmentation of the target audiences and therefore appropriate construction of requisite messages to each of those targets?
Precisely.
As we are on television now, we have a broad spectrum of persons of backgrounds who are watching us, different levels of education and so on and so forth. You complained about the proper messaging for the elderly, which in your opinion was absent. Would you like to write on that? And I also tell the question.
Thank you for putting that into perspective.
I want to say that as a nation, we have not been able to segment our messages to the different categories of people. All the adverts you see on televisions, and sometimes they talk, just lay out the formal protocols. Now, those have not addressed different segments. You talk about older persons, you talk about children. Nobody talks about them. And those of us who are prepared to talk about older persons do not have the resources to engage with all the stations and radios. In my phone here, I have about 10 jingles. We've done a jingle on how to wear the face mask. We have done a jingle on how the older persons, when the older person should wear a mask and all that. We've done these things, but the central message coming from the government is not addressing this. And I would like them to try and segment the messages to these sectors. That is one. The second thing is that government alone cannot do these things. Like he said, the state governors, the question is, what are they doing to also communicate? Yes, the PTF have committees, and he mentioned that they are relating to state governors. Ebonyi State has just given us a perfect political description of how to solve this problem. But the question is, when you go to the ground, what do we have? What do we have on the ground with other states? Are there such structures that Ebonyi State has replicated? And I can bet you, if you call any commissioner from any of that state, they will give you the same structure. But the question is, what really is on the ground to inform the people? I believe that for effective communication to the rural areas, you cannot do without the local government structure. Yes, why I say so, because every ward, the 8,009 wards in Nigeria have a councillor. They have, in my own area in the east, we have town union presidents. We have community leaders.
Okay, we have some of the messages on screen now.
Yeah, we have town criers. People who, either on a bicycle, on the leg, are, ringing the gong and calling people out to tell them. Therefore, if the information coming from the center gets to the state is supposed to mobilize the local government system and do effective communications. Yes, the prof said there are areas in the north where there are no signals for radio and television. But where we have, what is happening? Now, a lot of CSOs are working in some of these communities, but they lack also the funding to place their adverts on radios and television. I would think that because we're in a wartime now, the radio stations, the television stations should be supported by government to be able to focus on effective communication in the areas. For example, for older persons, I have about 10 jingles. If I get funded, we will be able to communicate to older persons on the precautionary measures they should take, either on their own, with when people are with them, because that's when we advise them to wear masks. We don't ask an older person to wear mask when he's alone in the house. He will suffocate. We've also said wearing a mask on the jaw or on the head, or below the nose is not right. We have jingles on it. You wear the mask such that it covers, your face. These masks, the one you have shown there now.
This one.
Yes, a lot of people don't realize that you can, at the tip here, if you bend, you can lock it to your nose. Okay. See? If you bend that, it will lock to your nose and not allow you to...
allow it to slip off.
Yes, to slip off. Mm-hmm. Take it up a little bit.
You can demonstrate that.
And then lock it.
Yes,
See?
Yes. You're the one speaking, so...
I have this mask, all right, to ensure that I press here. See?
That's a grip now.
That's a grip. It now has a grip. These things we're trying to, on our own, try and demonstrate to people, but how many people are hearing us? That's why we, as an organization, working with other persons, went into partnership with NOA, because they have the structure. We want to work with them to see whether we can leverage with them. But they also don't have the funding to do that.
Let's pause you for a while.
Yes.
Let's pause you. We'll take a short break. When we come back, because there's a story, a news report indicating that ages 31 to 40 are most susceptible, and that's coming from NCDC. It was attributed to NCDC, which is, of course, our able-bodied youth, the youth. So is there a deliberate messaging targeted at this specific, age group? And women are also, they are the ones that go to the market, they are the ones that go to the groceries, they are the ones that take care of the family. Is there a specific messaging targeted at this women? When we come back, we'll look at all the
but the elderly, that's the group that Senator worries about, they are more susceptible to fatalities.
Yes. Yes.
All right.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Claire, we're saying we're going on a short break. Okay, so we're taking a short break now. Good morning, Nigeria, reaching you live for the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority.
Coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
Inside my house again. This thing, the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take that rubbish. How's one of the parents? Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akagi Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
You don't wait for life. You go to meet life. It's not about how many chances you get. It's what you do with what you've got. Cup after cup. Morning after morning. Start strong. Finish strong. It all starts with a Nescafe.
Do you not know that our enemies have no face? They are indigents of no state. They come from no place. And if this boat capsizes, every one of us will go under. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer. Do not say, I am the Iroko when the forest is burning. Do not say, I am the Obeche when the forest is burning. Our differences will not stop us from perishing together. So when the drums sound, let everybody answer.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh. So it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
Coronavirus is real.
steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
All right, you're welcome back here. And I still, good morning, Nigeria, reaching you on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Let's go over to Professor Umaru Pate in our Kano Network Center. Professor Pate, you know, in the course of responding to the coronavirus pandemic, the war metaphor has often been deployed, that this is a warlike situation. But looking at it from the communication perspective, do you think that we have sufficiently deployed our arsenal, full arsenal that is, in communicating effectively to the various categories that ordinarily should be communicated to? And in doing this, we've been talking about messaging and messaging. I'm just wondering, have communication experts and scholars been also recruited into this process, whether by the national or subnational governments, to help them craft messages on account of behavioral research studies and so on and so forth? I mean, you have advertisers who are experts, you have other communication experts. Let's face it, it is not necessarily the business of Nigerian Television Authority to be crafting content for this kind of thing. NTA is a medium. Yes, Marshall McLuhan says that the medium is a message, but it will require guidance to say, look, for this specific set of human beings, on account of studies, you supervise graduate students, your colleagues also supervise graduate students, on account of studies arising from all of this, this is the way to address this kind of group, and this is how to go about it. Have we sufficiently, therefore, back to my earlier proposition, deployed our full arsenal to ensure that we succeed in the communication aspect of this war?
Without trying to sound negative, we have not. You see, in this business, just like we have said, it is like a war situation. There are some elements that are necessarily required. One, you need leadership. Leadership at all the levels. At the federal government level, I think one can sufficiently say there is a leadership that we always see working. But I don't know about the communication dimension, the extent to which that particular committee has been able to respond to the needs of the communication sector for it to sufficiently inform Nigerians. You see more of palliatives, you see more of treatment. But what we are trying to say is, let us not even go to that stage of people going to the clinics, going to the hospitals. Let us prevent it. And you can only prevent it from the level of communication. And in doing that, it is not by medicalization of communication that you can achieve the objective. Like you have earlier said, some of the words, to what extent have we been able to translate them into our local languages and also bring them down to our local radio and television stations? And not only that, go to forums at the local government level, at the community level, at the market level. Then in communication, we always talk about the who, we talk about the what, we talk about the 5 W's, as we always say them. Who is the individual sending the message? You cannot sit in Abuja or in Lagos and craft a message for somebody in Kukawa, for somebody in Sanyawa in Kano, or for somebody in Nasarawa in Adamawa State. It cannot sink into his head because of the psychological distance between the crafter of the message and the receiver of the message. That will not work. He needs examples. He needs influencers that are psychologically close to his mind so that it could sink and make sense to him. Secondly, we have not been communicating strategically. In strategic communication, you have to identify and segment the audiences into different categorizations, and based on their characteristics, and there are areas of interest and perhaps aspirations, you can now frame out messages that can make sense to each of the groups. I am not sure if we've been doing that. Equally, when you talk of those who are doing the communication themselves, NTA, NOAA, the state radio stations, local government information officers, and several other categories of communication people, to what extent have they been supported? When you are talking about palliative, they also need palliatives. For, let's take NTA staff, you are 24 hours on duty. Are you being given any special allowance? Take Radio Nigeria. Are they being given any special allowance, or some others? Again, at the lower level, NOAA, what kind of equipment do they have to reach the population? So these are issues. And then you talk about whether communication experts are being involved in the framing of some of the messages. Well, I don't know. I know that in Kano here, there's only one organization, UNICEF, consulted our Bayero University radio station to do some messaging for them. We crafted the messages, sent they approved it, and now they're putting on our UKF radio station, which is covering Kano and Boros.
All right, Professor Pate, thank you. I was also, just before we go to Ebonyi, I was also going to ask Professor Pate, because we've heard that government cannot do this, and you are a professor of mass communication. What has also been your own responsibility in terms of, again, couching the type of messaging, the content of messaging, as you have said, presenting to maybe NOA or to the national presidential task force team and all that. That would have been my question to you. But let's go to Ebonyi. Oh, Professor, are you there? Okay, you may wish to respond. I'm asking, as a professor of mass communication, what has also been your own contribution towards, churning out the right messaging for the different classes of people? Well, I'm sorry, Prof, but that's a question for you when we're able to reconnect with you. Let's now go back to Ebonyi State. Commissioner for Information, Uchenna Oji, you've listened to all the contributions in terms of messaging and content and all that. What is the approach? You told us about the structures, excellent structures that you have put in place, but what is the approach to messaging from Ebonyi?
Yeah, thank you so very much. Our approach is what we call a bottom-top approach. All the office holders, of course, we have the highest number of office holders, appointees in Ebonyi State. They have been told to go to the communities and ensure they interact with the people, liaise with the communities, to ensure that all the information, or processes are made to get down to the rural communities. And of course, we have platforms, through which they get on every minute basis, information, updated information from government. So they will now have to interact with the community leaders, and of course, the town union and all other organizations within the communities. And we need to also understand that we have jingles that are in different dialects of the state. And like I did say, the local media house is dedicated for the purpose of this COVID-19. And so it's called Situation Room, which I am managing, as it were. And I can tell you that day and night we do not sleep. Sometimes I will come to the media house by 2 in the morning, that is 2 a.m. or 12 midnight, to know what is happening at the borders. Because by 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning, no vehicles are allowed to come into Ebonyi or to go outside. That is a total lockdown, including the essential service vehicles and movements. And so that is what we are doing, and I'm sure the people are really, appreciating. You need to appreciate the index case in Ebonyi. So we have so far 9 index cases. But now in all of this is a case of people, returnees, coming out from outside Ebonyi, from the epicenter states. And the moment they arrive, they'll be intercepted. None was allowed to, mingle or unite with the family or the community, but they were intercepted on the road and taken straight to the isolation center where they were quarantined and necessary examinations made. So we are really working hard to ensure that we comply with even the national regulations on this COVID-19, and to ensure that we make our own regulations that will fit in with the local context.
All right. Thank you very much, Uche Naoji, Commissioner for Information in Ebonyi State. Just perhaps we needed to clarify something. We heard you say that Ebonyi has 9 index cases. That would appear to be a misstatement, with the greatest respect. You can only have 1 index case in the state. That is the first. And then every other person else takes from that. All right. We have a number of tweets that have come in. Let's quickly go through those tweets now and get the closing comments from our guest. Dele Jack Solomon. Nigeria needs to step up its advocacy campaign, advising people to practice good hand hygiene by washing their hands with soap and water or alcohol-based sanitizers, among other preventive measures. All right.
Okay, Chris Simeon. I hope I'm following you.
That's right.
Chris Simeon tweets, now that there is increase in community transmission, rural dwellers need awareness campaign through town criers, local radio, television, and billboards. I hope Commissioner is listening, because the way you Commissioner for Information spoke, it will appear that everyone in Ebonyi State is compliant with the preventive provisions. Kinsley.
Festus Akimboyewa, there should be hand washing awareness and campaigns across Nigeria. Government at all levels should support such campaigns and make sure people wash their hands regularly and disinfect them.
All right, Mike Anyako, National Orientation Agency, NOA, Mr. David Akagi is here, has a lot to play in this regard. Unfortunately, the agency is not doing much. They should live up to their responsibilities. Then, faith-based organizations, traditional institutions, social media, village town criers have great responsibilities in disseminating information against COVID-19. All hands must be on deck to defeat this unseen enemy. We can see it.
Lawal Alpha C, every level of government should take responsibility, particularly local governments, that should mobilize the grassroots, and that will include traditional institutions and social-cultural community development associations to convey messages.
All right, this Cecilia Okoroma, solution is advocacy, and she's referencing the markets and most places where it's business as usual. So NCDC has the wherewithal to engage some of the idle youth stand criers and also to carry out advocacy messages.
P.A. Oyebanji says stepping up awareness is good, but the most critical aspect is closing the gaps between the information and converting it to knowledge, that is, internalizing the information and applying the knowledge. This is where the problem is mostly, because the majority, even in the villages and rural areas, are aware of COVID-19. We have a number of other tweets from Oladayo Nafiu. He's talking about local governments. Onyebuchi Ezenwa talking about religious leaders and their role. And then Abdusalam Bello also.
In fact, sorry, the Abdusalam Bello raised some issues, ways he thinks we can also drive home the messages. He's talking about drama, using drama, and then every other means to pass information, not just in the major languages, but in smaller ones too.
Okay, all right. So those are the tweets. Ibrahim Tudu, thanks. Babagana Mohammed, thank you very much for your tweets. I just David Akoji. I mean, we keep talking about the structures that are available, what the subnational entities should do. We have 36 states and then the Federal Capital Territory. But from my experience, I don't know how many state governments, let's say now State Ministry of Information, have the requisite infrastructure for effective communication in a pandemic situation. Yes, state governments, they have their radio stations, they have their television stations, and now some of them have newspapers, and then they also have social media. But in percolating the information to usually hard to reach areas or otherwise neglected areas, I don't know how many of them have the cinemobile vans that we used to see in the past, and how many of them can actually have information officers just like NOAA has in local government areas. That's a gap that we need to fill, isn't it?
Yeah, I can tell you with some measure of certainty that those facilities are not there. They are most certainly not there in majority of the states. And these facilities are extremely important to achieve sensitization at the rural level. The National Orientation Agency, in its offices in the 774 local governments, do not have motorcycles for our community orientation and mobilization officers, whom we expect to travel from village to village. In a typical local government, you have like 30 villages to be covered. These guys do not have motorcycle. Our state directors in the 36 states, and in Abuja, do not have Hilux vans to navigate these hard-to-reach places. Most of them use their personal cars. And when those cars break down, they resort to commercial transport in the course of doing this work. So that question that Professor Pate raised is extremely pertinent. We need to take another look at our investment nationally in risk communication.
Okay, David,
at a time like this.
Okay. Senator, the gap in the messaging is conceptualization. How do we do? How do we go from there? What do we do?
Well, I think that the Presidential Task Force should see communication as a problem and invest in it. That means that they need to bring in professionals in communication to work in that department so that they can decide on the messages that will go to the different levels in different states. If they are able to do that and put some money behind it to support the activities, we will have a better means of communicating to the masses. Because anyway that everybody looks to, and that's why my organization, the Coalition of Society for the Right of Older Persons, ran to them, because we wanted communication to older persons across Nigeria, since as at now we don't have the structures in those areas.
It couldn't help you.
Anyway, well, we're just starting. In fact, what we hear from them is that they have no money.
Okay, we'll pause you. Professor Pate, briefly, we have less than 60 seconds to end this conversation.
Well, awareness is high on COVID-19. What we need is to increase the level of knowledge as well as the risk perception level of Nigerians, and that must go to all levels, and every structure of communication needs to be empowered, involved for results to be achieved, so that we save people from going for treatment.
All right, I think Kingsley, let's take the last question from Oji.
All right, no, well, just to get his closing thoughts on this. Uchenna Oji, we've already talked about how under-resourced state ministries of information are, and I'm sure that perhaps, as you have indicated, Ebonyi is different in this regard, but what would you like to see?
Yeah, we bring to bear patriotism, selflessness. We appreciate the fact that this is a war situation. In a war situation, everybody is a soldier. And so we don't go to wait for adequate funding. The little that we are getting, we appreciate. We are mobilizing all persons. For instance, every day we get reporters to go down to the rural communities to be part of that enforcement process. We get our information officers in all the local government areas and development centers to be part of the process, because these are public functionaries or civil servants, as the case may be.
All right, Uchenna Oji, Honorable Commissioner for Information, Ebonyi State, thank you very much for joining us via Skype from Abakaliki, the state capital. From Kano, we're joined by Professor Umaru Pate, who's Dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies, also Professor of Mass Communication. And here in our studios in Abuja, David Akagi, Special Assistant to the Director General of the National Orientation Agency. Thanks always for being our guest.
Thank you very much.
And Distinguished Senator Eze Ajoko, President, Coalition of Societies for the Rights of Older Persons in Nigeria. We'd like to thank you for your thoughts and your ideas.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, so that does it for us for today, and indeed for the week on Good Morning Nigeria. As always, we appreciate you being with us. So we're back on Monday, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, enjoy your weekend by staying safe and being well. I'm Kingsley Osadolo.
I'm Claire Delabu Abdurazak, and would like to appreciate all of you, our health workers. Please do stay safe, and God bless you.